Okay.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Jupiter Brain. My name is Joshua Torres. This is
Albert.
Yes, and today we are talking to a very special guest, our second student guest, Joshua Thompson.
Hi, what's up?
And so you said you're in your second semester of electrical engineering.
Second year. Actually, wait. I guess, second semester.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome. And so today we're going to be talking about the electrical grid. And of course, you know, we always say that we are engineers by day, philosophers by night. So we're probably going to end up talking about a bunch of different things, but with the emphasis on the electrical grid. And to me, I didn't really, I don't think you think about the electrical grid very much as like just a consumer of electricity. You're just at home with your products, right? And putting them into the wall, and you don't even think about the electricity until maybe you pay the bill. But sometimes, especially like students, we're not paying a lot of bills like that. So, so it's sort of It took me till recently to really dive into it and see the importance of it, but also like the fragility of it. So we're going to get into that here in just a second, but we like to start off every podcast by talking about how our week went. So cool. So how did your week go?
My week, this has been a little busy. I've had a lot of work to do, basically.
Okay.
But,
there we go.
I don't think anything new happened to me this week besides just.
So what classes are you taking?
I'm taking PSE 1, Calculus 2, General Chemistry 2, both the lecture and the lab. I'm taking Engineering Computing lecture and lab.
Okay.
I'm taking Engineering Ethics.
Okay.
Am I missing something?
So what is that, 15 hours?
No, that's 18 hours.
Okay.
No, 19 hours.
Let's go.
Crazy.
Yeah. My first semester I took, 17 or 18 hours? Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, the load they give you of an engineer, right? I was not expecting it. I came from Rose State, where I got my essentially applied science degree, associates, and came over here, and I hadn't been a full-time student. I was just taking a few classes here and there, trying to get back into the swing of things, since this is my second time trying to do college. And so, I go and I talk to an advisor, and she's like, okay, well, let's see here. Let's sign you up for classes. And she just starts adding classes, not really telling me like what she's adding or whatever. And so at the end of it, she's like, all right, here's your classes. And I start to, total them up. And it was 17 hours. I was like, wait. I haven't even, I was expecting, I was like, this is going to be my first like full time semester. I was expecting 12 hours, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to manage that? And then I'm hit with 17 hours. I was like, oh, okay. And so I was talking to her, I was like, well, why am I taking so many hours? And she said, well, you're an engineering student, and engineering students, to get the degree, you actually have more hours you need to take in order to graduate with an engineering degree. And I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, so all your semesters are going to be like 16, 17, 15 hours. I was like, oh, okay. All right, well, throw me to the wolves. Let's go.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if you think about it, right? I mean, every day we learn so much new things because of research, right? They are throwing more and more things backwards. So my PhDs are now like, for example, in biology, right? Biomedical engineering. So they are now looking, they don't have cell biology anymore. At that level, they call it cell physiology, because they don't just talk about what's in a cell. They talk about how everything works together. So now, cell biology is being pushed back to college, and eventually is going to be, and already is being taught in a lot of high schools around the world. So it's like, even quantum mechanics. You think it's a modern physics class, right? It's being taught in high schools now.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I taught chemistry for like a year, and they teach a lot of like basic quantum mechanics when it comes to the like orbitals, electron shell orbitals and things like that. Yeah. Like the reason why they exist and the shapes they do. Yeah. We taught that. It's pretty insane.
Well, I was at APS Dallas a few semesters ago, And there was a talk given by an educator, and she was talking about trying to teach, what was it, like kindergarteners about quantum physics. And I was like, what? But you know, they're teaching them sort of I want to say like the hands-on type of stuff. They're not like showing them equations and things like that, but they're just sort of like, you know, to me, I think it's brilliant, right? To sort of show kids things early, right? I never took a physics course in high school. So I was excited to take it in college, but I love the idea of exposing them to it like super early, right? I have a little nephew, he's 3, 4, and I'm constantly like, so what do you know about quantum mechanics? And he's like, Uncle, what are you talking about?
Soon he'll learn. Soon.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for introducing kids to like the higher side of physics, to like the quantum mechanics and relativity and things like that, just because it's magical seeming, right?
Yes.
Like it's like ordinary mechanics and even like electrodynamics and stuff like that. It's people interact with it all the time, right? Whereas the quantum stuff, it's so foreign and magical that I think a lot of people, when exposed to that, decide for themselves, I like physics. You know what I mean? Because they like hearing the story. They like hearing like something that's outside of normal reality. And just having that one little idea in your head of I like physics makes you pay more attention to something like a boring mechanics class, right?
For sure.
Because you need to learn boring mechanics before you can get into quantum mechanics.
Yeah, so I guess first let's sort of like, if you don't mind, I would like to sort of dive into your background. And, you know, whenever I first met you, I believe it was at a Physics Society talk, and you seemed very, very curious. And from there, I was just like, oh, we got to get this guy on the podcast, and we got to figure out where that curiosity comes from and like what else he's curious about. Because one of our favorite sayings is the most interesting people are the ones right around you. And it's one of the reasons why we try to get so many of, you know, people who are at UCO, so professors and students here, because I'm genuinely curious about the people around us. And so if you don't mind, unpack a little bit about like where you're from, where that curiosity came from, how you got into electrical engineering and stuff like that.
So I'm from Surreal, Oklahoma. It's like a tiny little town between Lawton and Chickasha.
Yeah.
It's population total of like 800.
Okay. I graduated from Chickasha.
Oh, you graduated from Chickasha?
Yeah.
Really? Most of my friends are from Chickasha.
Oh, okay, nice.
I have very few friends from Surreal nowadays. I pretty much only like hang out in Chickasha people.
Okay, nice.
Because I went to high school there for 1 year.
Okay.
But all my friends still come from that 1 year that I met then.
Okay.
But I'm from there. I went to OU for 2 years. I got a bachelor's degree in letters, which is like basically history, philosophy, literature. I did that because I wanted to go to law school at OU Law. Okay. And I graduated with that. I was really, my only concern was getting done as fast as possible. So I was taking like 22 hours a semester on average, plus 9 in the summer. Just because I always had this idea of like a bachelor's degree for a lawyer, which is what I wanted to do, is basically extra high school. You know what I mean? Like it's not really towards your career, right? Because for most people it isn't. Okay. Most lawyers end up doing something like philosophy or political science or something like that. And political science is a little bit related, but barely. Especially if you're talking about like the practical side of law, what you're actually going to be doing as a lawyer. It has nothing to do with it. So I was really just trying to tick the box of I have a bachelor's degree so that I can go to law school. And I did that, but whenever I was in law school, I had a few things that I learned. One, everyone at that law school and everyone that I've still met that's currently going to law school hates their lives. And not only that, it's because it's hard, but it's about the same degree so far, at least, as engineering school. I think it's just difficult school. But what really drove it home of I don't want to be a lawyer is what would you guess the median salary of a lawyer in Oklahoma is? Not average, but median.
I mean, my guess is just going to go off of like, because I know how much school you have to go to, and also in like popular, how would I say? I don't know. I would say $100,000.
No, it's like 75 grand. And that's with an average. I don't even know the specific for that one, but most people who go to law school end up with at least 100,000 in debt. Usually, quite a bit more.
Because it's like 8 years of school, right?
8 years total.
It's
yeah.
kind of like
it's
actually
like
getting a doctorate, right?
It's 7 years total because you have 4 years of a bachelor's plus 3 of law school.
Okay.
But yeah, I did a semester of law school. Decided I didn't want to do that. I actually kind of floundered around doing random jobs after that for like, I don't know, 4 months or so. And then I got picked up as a teacher, as an adjunct teacher teaching physical science and chemistry at Lexington High School.
Okay.
I did that for another semester. I really enjoyed it.
So you taught physics without
physical science?
Physical science. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's basically the absolute basics of physics and chemistry together. But like not going very deep, like very very basics.
But not even having like that background.
No.
So I'm sure you had to maybe learn a lot too as you were going.
That was very much the case. I would study the next week's material the week prior, but I was really dedicated. I was I was doing a lot more work than any of my teacher coworkers. I was at the school for the first while that I was teaching, the first like 2 months. I was usually there from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day. Just because I had a lot more work than the average person. Not only because I didn't have any lesson plans, right? Because a lot of teachers rely on lesson plans that they've made the year prior, the year whenever they first started teaching. And I was just a new teacher, so I had to make my new lesson plans.
They didn't have like a template for you? The person who
they had a template, but the template is so broad that it's basically useless.
Wow.
So I had to make my lesson plans. I had to do grading. I had to learn the subject as deeply as I can.
Yeah.
It was more of a struggle with chemistry than it was with the physical science, because the physical science was basic enough to where I didn't really have to teach myself much because I already knew this stuff out of interest, right?
Sort of learning definitions probably more than anything.
Definitions and basic math and, and like the basic equations, not like never really going very deep. But doing that made me realize that I actually really like physics.
Okay.
And I actually came here initially doing engineering physics because I was just really interested in it, and I also didn't want to teach. I knew that I didn't want to teach forever. Even though I liked it, I more liked the subject material than I did like working with students. Right. And once I was here, I further learned that the specific field that interests me the most is electrical science. And I also feel like the careers that open for electrical engineers is more to my interest than for mechanical or anything like that.
So is there something specific that sparked that interest? Like,
I don't know if there's anything specific. I just find it more interesting. It's just like it's a little more foreign. You know what I mean?
Well, and then so this was my issue, right? Because So at first I thought I was going to go do a computer science degree, but then while I was at Rose, I had a really good physics professor, and I just sort of fell in love with physics.
Yep.
And so I came over here and I was like thinking, well, they have an engineering physics degree. That sounds more up my alley. And then I started researching and doing things after I'd already said I'm going to commit to engineering physics. And from everything that I researched, it said that, if you're wanting to try to go get a job, it's a very broad degree, and that's not what apparently people who have jobs available are looking for. They're looking for not necessarily a specialist, but they're looking for an electrical engineer or a computer engineer, so that's whenever I changed to computer engineering to be, I guess, more specific. But yeah, definitely the idea of physics is what interests me the most out of everything, I think.
That's true for me as well. I came out there as well trying to do engineering physics, and I had a similar idea of like, I don't want to have to try and pitch myself for something, right? Yeah. Because people who hire engineers, they hire them for a specific job usually. They're not trying to hire like, they have an idea of what you're going to be doing before they hire you, right? Yeah. And so they're trying to find someone who as accurately fits that description in their head of what this person's going to be doing as possible. And every single time it's going to be either electrical or computer or mechanical, because you're going to be doing a specific job, right? Yeah. And so in order to hire someone that's engineering physics, that person has to come in and pitch themselves a little bit more because it's not as natural of a fit, right? Like, like when you have a job and you're imagining the hypothetical person that you would want to hire for this job, like, I think you would want to try and tick as many of those boxes as possible.
So are you thinking like going to work for some energy company?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, power systems is what I'm most interested in for sure. Okay. Mainly just because, I mean, electronics are interesting to me, but not as nearly as much as just electrical power, as like power plants and power transportation. I know that's the stereotypically boring side of it, but it's way more interesting to me because it's like the things that used to be power, that power our world, right? In the Industrial Revolution, for example, they were right there. Right? You saw the steam engine that was powering your textile mill right there. And it was burning coal in front of your face. Right? Nowadays, that stuff still exists. It's just miles away. Right? And it's still powering your textile mill. It's just doing it at nearly the speed of light over the course of the wires that constitute the arteries of our world, right?
Yes. Yeah, and apparently, they say that the electrical grid is the largest piece of technology in the world. Which, if you think about it, right, the grid just spans throughout the whole world, which is wild.
And it's an individual piece of technology, right? It's a grid that is operated together. You can't even it's very hard to control where electricity goes on a grid. Like, for example, if you have a solar panel that you put on your roof, right? Usually, in most cases, that solar panel is actually not powering your house. That solar panel is feeding its power directly into the grid being used by whoever is plugged in right now.
Before we get to that, because I feel like we have a lot of time to get into the electrical grid. So, but I'm still kind of curious, like, where did this curiosity, this sort of like passion come from? Because, like, it took me a while to find my curiosity for how things work. I think it takes a lot of people a certain something that
like a little motivation.
Yeah. Some people are born with it. Like Albert's been looking into to physics almost his whole life, right? Especially like quantum physics and like the more complex things. And so, and then you see like child prodigies, all the time, and where they found math like super early.
And the 10-year-old master degree.
Yeah. And so I'm just always curious and interested in hearing like where maybe you think that spark came from. Like, does it come from your family maybe? Yeah. Does it like where?
See, I don't necessarily have as... like, I'm not the kind of guy who was always, like, into science. You know what I mean? I've always been extremely curious, and and personally motivated to teach myself things. But I never thought of myself as a science and math guy, as like a STEM guy in general. Because, I mean, it probably stems from the fact that I wasn't as good at math as I was at the other subjects as a kid, right? So I didn't really, I always thought like I'd go into something more gift of Gabby, you know what I mean? Because I that's always what I've thought of as my main skill in life is that I'm good at talking.
So that's why you was thinking lawyer. That's
Yeah.
That all makes
That
sense.
was the idea in my head, is that
that makes sense.
how can I make a lot of money by just being good at talking?
Yeah.
And lawyer is up there, right? But after law school, after that the disheartening experience of going there and then learning I don't really want to be doing that, I kind of conceived myself differently, and I sort of just like, and while I was teaching too, that was a big part of it, is that I like knowing more about the world, right? And I also knew, my interests as a kid lied closer to like languages and like politics and the world and things like that. Like, like more the type of thing that a kid who wants to be a lawyer would be into, right? But I wish I had a clear idea about what made me change and be more interested in STEM. I really feel like it has a lot more to do with the fact that I just feel like there's more untapped potential there. I can actually learn more about the world. There's more unpaved road down that street. You know what I mean? Like, I can make more progress knowing more about the world through the science and engineering route than I can any other route, really.
That makes interesting. So if you were to just hypothesize, right, or philosophize about like where curiosity comes from.
For me, it came from, I want to say my dad, because like he, as a kid, it's not really curiosity and more about like logic, because I always had the thing of like, if I could make a good case for myself for like XYZ thing being the best course of action, he would take it, right? He was never the sort of guy to be like do it because I said, right? Like if I could come up with a reason why, this other thing would be better for me in for whatever reason, he would always let that go. And curiosity, I was into YouTube as a kid.
Okay.
As a lot of people my age are, but I always gravitated towards like the educational stuff and like reading books and things like that. I don't know.
Are your parents like?
They're teachers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually technically come from like a big old long line of teachers.
Okay.
Technically.
Interesting.
My dad is a teacher. My mom is a teacher's aide. That's a big old story. She's his aide.
Okay.
But I don't want to get into that. It's a big story.
That's fine.
And my grandma was a teacher. She was a like speech teacher for like kids with speech impediments. And my grandpa was a colonel in the Air Force, but then after he retired, he became a teacher. So technically, that would make me fourth generation, I guess. Because I taught for one semester.
Yeah.
I feel like you still can be a very good professor if someday you get into like, I don't know, like a PhD and go into industry, and I feel like you can still come back to be a professor and that'll be pretty good.
Yeah, that was when I first came down studying engineering physics. That was kind of my idea. So I had more of the idea of professor in my head than I did engineer. But I've switched. I feel like I want to work in industry now.
Okay, so are you going to get a master? Are you thinking about getting a master's? Or are you just going to get a bachelor's and go on? Or
it entirely depends on what happens during my degree and after. I just got an internship in Lawton for next semester. I'm not even going to be here next semester because I'm going to be doing that full time. So it really depends on what are my options, right? Like if I have a really good option for working in industry straight out of the bachelor's degree, then I'm going to be doing that. But if I don't have that good of one that I could see myself like working for a career for my life, then I'll probably do a master's.
So wait, you're just going to go to work full time and skip a semester, or what?
Yeah, because because I really, from what I hear, a degree alone in the current job market is really hard to get a job with. And I'm intentionally terrified of that. So I really want to have a internship on my resume. And so I couldn't find any ones that would accept a sophomore during the summer, but I could find one that would accept me during the spring semester. So I'm doing that. Yeah, I'm just going to skip a semester. Also, there was another reason that it was Calc 2. The fact that like that class, I'm kind of on the edge a little bit. Yeah. And so I want to make sure that my next semester will be well spent, even if I have to just retake Calc 2.
Yeah. So then, are you thinking about just taking like 1 or 2 classes, or just no classes?
Probably just Calc 3.
Okay.
While I'm in the internship, it's full time. It's more than full time actually. It's 36 hours a week.
Holy cow! That's crazy. And that's just an internship.
Yeah, it's an internship.
How was that even considered an internship?
I don't know. It's $19 an hour. It's not bad.
What is it doing?
You should be getting a full time wage.
Yeah. What is it doing?
It's they call it a PE or what is it exactly a PE construction management intern. It's at Wilmar Electric in Lawton. Okay. They do electrical construction, and I would just be working with their engineering team as an intern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Albert, how was your week?
Oh, my week has been good but tiring because I went to symposium, a cell biology symposium, and it was pretty fun. Met a lot of professors, got a lot of feedback about my poster presentation, learned a lot of new things. But other than that, just been...
You were telling me about this paper just a little bit ago about some kind of quantum phenomenon.
Oh, no. I was basically just explaining... there was this experiment back in the 1970s called a Frank Hertz experiment. No, actually, it's even way before that. Basically, I was just telling you like how quantum physics, you know how like quantized energy level seems to be so like mysterious, mystical to a lot of people. In reality, it isn't, because as Frank and Hertz shows that when the electron has enough energy in a vacuum tube and it hits like mercury or neon vapors, if you increase the voltage to that energy and it hits it, right, it went from an elastic scatter to an inelastic scattering, and it starts ionizing or exciting all those electrons in those vapors, and they release like UV rays, for example. And that's how the fluorescent light bulbs are actually invented.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it's just crazy how like some simple experiment set up like that led to an invention of like fluorescent light bulb, and also like realization of like quantization of energy, you know. But yeah, no, that's basically what I wanted to tell you just now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean the whole like history. I'm a huge history buff. I love. That's sort of how I stumbled upon math and physics. I stumbled upon my love for it, anyways. Like I try to any new topic, I try to learn a little bit of history about it. And so before I took my first physics course, I read a bunch of history about it, and for some reason it makes it more interesting to me. Like you start hearing about all these different people,
how they discovered it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hello, space travelers. Want to look sharp while bending space time? We've got brand new Physics Society t-shirts. The clean graphic tee is just $20, and if you want to drop some Einstein-level wisdom on the back with this quote, "I have no special talents, I'm only passionately curious," that one's only $25. Rep your curiosity, rep the cosmos, and support the Physics Society. Grab yours today before entropy takes over.
And so about that, right? I was actually I think it was a tweet this morning. This guy was like talking about a math textbook, and he thinks that math textbooks, they need to have like the like how they went about discovering this thing. Instead, they just give us the math and like expect us to memorize it and things like that. And I think a lot of times it sticks more when you have a story to that thing, right? And so the history of electricity is very fascinating. You have like Maxwell and Faraday, and you even have like before that, I forget what his name was. Let's see, the Thales of Miletus.
I think he's also the guy that theorized the atom.
Yeah, so he was like the first person to really like experiment with electricity, and this was in the what was it, 600 BC?
It was an experiment. It was a physical experiment, not a thought experiment.
He took like so he took amber and he took like cloth or wool and he just started rubbing on it and he started creating static electricity. So electric comes from electron. Is it electron or electric?
Let's see here. Where did I have it?
It says it's the word for amber or something. Electron?
Yes, electron, which is the word for amber, later gives us electricity.
Yeah. Wait, really? Because we knew about electricity far before we knew about the electron, right?
No. But the Greek word for amber is electron. Okay. So that word derived into electricity, and then that helps derive it back into the particle electron. So it's like a weird lexicon of like a circle of life for a lexicon.
Yes. Well, I think it's always fascinating because, for the longest time, there were so many people that were hypothesizing that things were made out of very small particles, and then there were a lot of people going saying things against that. And at the time, we didn't have like the experiments to be able to really show that to people. And I just there's a book called The Tao of Physics. I bring this up all the time because I think everybody should know about it.
That book is amazing.
The Tao of Physics.
The Tao of Physics. So it goes into this, in between the parallels of quantum physics and Eastern philosophies. And it talks about how like these Buddhists like thousands of years ago hypothesized, or from just thinking about it.
Thought experiments, yeah.
I don't know if you'd call it thought experiment. I don't think they would call it thought experiment. I think they would call it just meditations, right? Yeah. And just from meditating, they felt like they could understand the universe.
I mean, in Buddhism, meditation is not just about sitting there and like not thinking, or the meditation is actually more of pondering. So how there's a story about like how Buddha, right, sat under a tree for like 7 days or something, and then he was pondering. No, he was pondering and meditating on life. But back in the day, think about it, right? Thales, for example, he's just pondering all the time, like, what is that made out of? What is that made out of? If I keep breaking them down, eventually it's gonna lead somewhere, right? It's gonna stop somewhere. So that pondering is technically meditation. It's just that modern day, that word became more like, you sit still, take a breath, and all that.
Yeah. And I think the thought experiment gets a bad rap, right? Or like not necessarily just the thought experiment, but just sitting there and thinking. Because like a lot of advancements in science have really come from that, right? Even though we'd like to talk about the physical experiment as like the foundation of everything, really, a lot of times the physical experiment comes after the realization of what's going on, right? The physical experiment is sitting there trying to prove what you already think in your head, right?
It's like, this is what's going on, but I need to test it.
Yeah, you need to prove it.
How can I test it, right? And that idea became the experiment.
Like, there's a lot of, like, Einstein has a bunch of examples of them, like the photoelectric effect, as well as relativity itself came first in thought experiments, like one with the guy falling in the elevator it was off a building, right? The happiest thought he ever had in his life. And as well as the photoelectric effect, that both came first in thought experiments, and then later on much later on in the case of relativity was proven with like literal experiments.
It's funny, you don't just stumble upon relativity.
You're right.
And I think it's interesting how, I don't know, maybe some people feel that way about things. I don't know. Like, and then there's the thought of like the genius, right? And that, he came up with that thing because he's a genius. And, Einstein was given that title so many different times, right? There's like, I believe there's like New York Times articles about him being a genius back in the day when he was still walking the earth. And, to him, that's why, we put on the back of our T-shirts his quote that's also hung up in Howe Hall, which is, "I have no special talents, So he's saying like, I'm no genius. I'm only passionately curious. And then he also talks about how, you know, he's no genius. He just sits and thinks about the problem more than other people. And yeah, you know, Feynman was the same way. Apparently, like he lost his wife because he was constantly doing calculus in his head and like I guess not giving a lot of energy to their relationship. And so, you know, and I think that's what we sort of as very curious people or like scientists, researchers is, you know, if you want to have a balanced life, you can't just be thinking about these things all the time. Now, for humanity, that could mean a good thing, right? Yeah. But for your personal life, it could be really bad.
Yeah, there's plenty of tortured geniuses. So.
Yeah.
But there's another quote that pertains to that. The Edison quote: the invention is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily take a special kind of person. It just takes a special kind of action.
Yes.
Right? Like a kind of special attitude.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And whenever I hear of that, right, and that's why I say go read the history of it, because you hear those different anecdotes or quotes from people who are seen as geniuses, and they're reflecting on their own ideas and things, and they're just like, it's just me putting in the work, right? Yeah. It's not that I'm different from anybody other than, you know, the job I've taken, right? And so, you know.
Also, I just want to point out something. People don't realize how, like, do you guys know about the Solvay conference? Like, do you remember the picture of the smartest picture alive where Marie Curie, Max Planck, Max Born, all of them are in there? Yeah. So the Solvay conference is already a group of very, very smart people. Einstein was not invited to it till later. So like maybe seventh Solvay conference or something, and the paper that got him in there wasn't special relativity. It was actually the photoelectric effect, and also like a paper on like radiation, and also Brownian motion. So it's actually these statistical mechanics papers that actually got him invited, not special relativity. Which is kind of insane.
Was special relativity like
1905
advanced at that time? Like, did he actually make much progress in special relativity by that time?
Yes.
Really?
Because general relativity was the big breakthrough, and general relativity came way after special relativity.
I see. Right.
Yeah, and so there's, you know, I was reading a book about, or listening to it, whatever. Well, I was listening a lot to the book that you sent me, Grid, and then that inspired me to find another book, which was essentially about Michael Faraday and Maxwell. And in it, they just go over the history of electricity and how it comes to be. And, you know, it's just fascinating that this thing that we can't even see, right? And it's probably one of the reasons why it took so long for us to be able to harness it, or for us to even, you know, because like we can see fire, and fire, you know, apparently was like invented, or not invented, but discovered from cavemen, right? But then you move into history thousands of years later, and we still haven't, you know, been able to harness electricity until like Michael Faraday comes along, and Maxwell, and they start, you know, really
unifying
believing, and really believing that they can harness this thing, and so yeah, there's just I don't know. I just always tell people, go read the history. It's so interesting. Yeah. And at the same time, like, you find out that things happen in very small increments. It's not like, I mean, yes, breakthroughs happen, but sometimes those breakthroughs can take hundreds of years.
People stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Oftentimes the big inventor gets all the credit, but in reality, they really were just the one who put the top Lego brick on top of the mountain, right?
Yeah. And so I guess let's just go ahead and get into the electrical grid, right? So what I don't know. How would you start off the electrical grid? Because I mean, it's sort of interesting. It's just this huge behemoth, and there's like so many different parts to it, and it seems like it could just falter at any moment.
Yeah. Especially nowadays with renewables. The renewables is the big threat to the continued existence of the electrical grid. The continued existence, because there's a lot of practicality in discontinuing the big grid's existence, right? Because a lot of the problems with the current grid is due down to the fact that it is one thing. It is one big grid. When a much more resilient system would, and we're kind of transitioning there in a lot of places, would be a series of many smaller grids that are all connected that work as one big grid most of the time, but can easily be flipped to where they are isolated. Because usually the problems in the grid happen in one place. And if that one place can be isolated by all their neighbors cutting off contact, then the blackout doesn't propagate. It's local then, right? And renewables are also a big problem because they don't produce electricity in the same way that we've built the grid around producing.
Yeah, I think that's a huge misconception, right? Whenever I was listening to that book, and they talk about how hard it is to deal with the renewables, I was like, oh, well, now it makes sense, right? Like, so wind turbines, right? And for what? So they're, the wind turbines, they're turning from the wind, and then that turning of the motor creates electricity and feeds into the grid. But if you think about it, like, wind is not always happening. There are like really windy places in America, and they've made sure to put wind turbines there. But at the same time, even in those places, wind is not just a constant, right? And so there was like this story in the book that talks about how, I forget exactly where it was, but a huge wind farm, and there was like this huge windstorm that comes through, and they ended up actually getting like a surplus of energy from this thing, and they had to figure out what to do with it.
Right.
And I believe it actually caused a blackout.
Yeah. So it caused a blackout. It not necessarily directly caused a blackout. It caused them to be forced to intentionally cause a blackout. Because the problem is that, this is a fascinating thing about the grid itself. Electricity is made at the same moment that it's consumed, right? So we don't usually think about that. We usually think about buying electricity from the power company in the same way we buy any other product, right? But when in reality, you flip that switch on to turn the lights on in your room, and the power company makes a little bit more electricity, right? They have to meet supply. They follow supply, demand. The supply follows the demand. They have to be equal, otherwise there's problems in the system. There's oversupply, right? And that can destroy a lot of electrical systems, electronics especially. And it can also mess with the frequency of AC on the...
A little bit closer to the right.
It can also mess with the frequency of AC on the power lines. And so that's one of the big problems with renewables, with wind in particular. I mean, it's not particular, but with wind, is that not only is it not consistent, see, it's hard to predict around, it's also it is not reactive. You can't intentionally make the wind turbine spin faster or slower. The slower part is also big, right? Because with coal power, for example, if you have a reading that the consumption on the grid is really unexpectedly low right now, you're not going to destroy a bunch of people's electronics by oversupplying them. You can just turn down the amount of electricity you're producing so that it's equal still. But if you have everything connected to a big old wind farm, the wind keeps on spinning, but the people, they don't follow with how much production it is with how much they consume. And so if a downtime in how much people are consuming happens at the same time as an uptime in the amount of that's being produced, it destroys a lot of electronic, and you have to have people literally just turn off the entire grid so that stuff doesn't get destroyed.
Well, I thought what was fascinating is they talk about the interplay between these different businesses, right? You have the electrical company, and then you also have the people, because I thought the electrical company owned the wind farms and the solar panel farms, but that's not the case. And so like there's this tension between these two companies because the electrical company, who's trying to make sure that everybody has power, is, seeing all of this energy, or some of the energy not coming in from these wind turbines and these other renewable resources. And like the times when the turbines are producing too much energy, the electrical company's like, hey, can you turn off your money-making machines over there? And they're like, why would we do that? Because the more energy we create, the more money we make. But to the electrical company, they're like, well, we're going to overload something, and something's going to break, and then people are going to be without electricity. We're going to have a lot of mad customers. So a lot of this of like, I guess just the inefficiencies and the poor planning around this grid is due to all the interplay of these different businesses trying to work together, but also at the same time not working together cohesively.
The fragile balance, right? And especially today with all the data centers and all the different like AI centers, right? They are draining so much power that, and also just like what he says, you have to supply as we demand. But those AI companies, they also have fluctuating demands because people use those data centers different amounts at different times, so they consume different amount of power. So how are you gonna compare all that? If you look at the graph and chart, right, there's more power surges in today than way before because of more and more companies setting up data centers and all that.
Yeah. And another thing about data centers is that they cannot tolerate a blackout. It's not like with most places where like, there's a little bit of problem if power ever goes out. But a data center, there's a lot more of a problem with getting a blackout. That's why they're investing in things like modular nuclear reactors and things like that to supply their own power, completely take themselves off the grid, right? That's inspired partially by data centers currently that were doing this before the invention of AI. Things like AWS and Google and things like that.
Cloud computing and all that.
Have a lot of them on their own grids. They're not connected to the grid at all. They supply their own power through natural gas turbines. And Google's a main one that was innovating with that. And so there's already precedent of it being really economical to make data centers not connected to the grid at all, which is not only good for them, but it's also good for the rest of us because we don't have to pay extra electrical bills just because OpenAI or whatever, Oracle, whoever decided that they wanted to triple their electricity consumption.
It's kind of fascinating how, so there's like a double-edged sword, because when they were first building like the first I want to say like electrical generators, right? Well, there wasn't sort of a precedence for people wanting to consume electricity. So they sort of had to go on this weird marketing campaign to get people to be consumers of products, right? Because at the time you lived in an era where people were making a lot of their own stuff for their neighbor, and they were exchanging goods back and forth. And then now you start having people have electricity in their homes, and you're like, okay, well, here's your bill for the month, and then trying to make sure that is like a sustainable business. You have to try to find more people to sign up for this electricity, and so it actually started and sparked the consumer, just the idea of consumerism.
Yeah. Also, the monopolistic practices of the time were actually really good for the propagation of electricity, because electricity doesn't really work that well. At least the utility side, like the transporters of electricity, really doesn't work that well as a competitive atmosphere. Because if you have, especially at the time, whenever there was no standardization of voltages and later on with AC frequencies as well, that was a big problem in the early days of the grid, where there really wasn't one grid, there was more like 6 for different levels of voltage, because there wasn't really that great of ways to convert to step up and step down voltage, because it was all DC. It wasn't AC, right? Because it was Edison's tech, not Tesla's.
Yes. And there's the Current Wars, which there's like a bunch of documentaries on. I believe there's like a movie over. It was really a big deal.
Right, yeah. And Edison staked his entire reputation on that. He was one of the most famous inventors of all time, especially at the time. He was like this big name guy, and he went so far down the deep end of supporting DC over AC on power lines that he completely ruined his reputation. He got kicked off of Hewlett Packard.
And there was a lot of like, how do I say, sketchy things that he was doing in order to promote DC. Like, I mean, they killed a bunch of animals.
He invented electrocution.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, and he named it like Tesla's electric chair or something like that. Even though
Westinghouse's. Because Westinghouse was the one supporting Tesla.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Tesla was just the inventor. Westinghouse was the big business guy.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, it just goes to show, I mean, for one, they knew the potential for it, right? Because I think there's like a interesting quote by Faraday. Was somebody asked him, well, what is this electricity going to be good for? And Faraday says, well, one day you're going to be able to tax it.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder how much of a joke that was, or if that was really true, like truly what he believed.
I mean, yeah, I don't know, because
I feel like that's
Faraday,
a backhanded comment too. That
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, Faraday was an experimenter and researcher. And so, but at the same time, he probably knew that he had to make money to keep supporting his research, right? And so, yeah, I wish I had looked into sort of, like where was he getting his money? Was he, because I don't remember if he was getting like a professorship somewhere. I know that he was giving a lot of lectures at, there was like a famous lecture hall that a bunch of scientists would give lectures at.
Royal Institute. Faraday, right? Talk about Faraday.
He was also
yeah, I believe you're right, yeah.
For the early part of his career, he was basically like a personal assistant to Davy. What?
Yes, Davy Thompson.
Yeah.
Davy Thomas.
Davy was his last name.
Oh.
It was something Davy. He had 3 names. He was something Davy.
Okay.
He was a pretty accomplished scientist of his own right. He did a lot of stuff on
Humphrey Davy.
Yeah. Humphrey Davy. He was a personal assistant of Humphrey Davy for a lot of his stuff, and there was only a rift between the two of them whenever Faraday, with his which invention was it? It was some big invention that he had a patent for.
Foundational discoveries for electricity and magnetism, which unfortunately led to a strain of his relationship with Davy.
Right, yeah. Because he had a patent on some specific technology, and he did not write Davy in for any sort of credit at all. He claimed it all of himself, even though he was working in Davy's lab and working for Davy.
Yeah. No, it's a fascinating history because you have Faraday following him, and because Faraday was a bookbinder. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, by trade. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess he was sort of tired of that and really interested in I guess the research that Davies was doing and the experimentation, and so he just did whatever he could to, hop on Davy's wagon. And so I believe they had a trip somewhere, and Faraday ended up actually essentially being his servant.
He gave him a binded book. He went to one of his lectures, and then he took a bunch of detailed notes. He professionally bound it, which was really much more impressive at the time. It was a very expensive thing to do, and he gave the book, the professionally bound book full of notes from Davy's lectures to Davy. And that was how he got the job as the assistant, even though he was an underclass guy. He was kind of from a poor family, and Davy was really traditional in the sense that he didn't want to be working with poor people, essentially.
Oh, wow.
And so Faraday was like an exception for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that kind of partially informed their hatred for each other later on.
Yeah.
Also, Faraday, after them splitting up like that, a lot of Faraday's stuff in the field of electrochemistry, like batteries and things like that, came specifically because he was forbidden from working on electricity, like electrical motors and generators, by Davy.
Yeah, he's the one that came up with electrodeposition, right?
Yeah.
Which is like, I never knew that. We do electrodeposition in our lab, and like I had never known that. Oh, it was Faraday, and that's what's so crazy of like how prolific Faraday was. I mean, not only was he pushing the boundaries of electricity and coming up with these new inventions that's like revolutionized the transport of electricity, but also he was giving a lot of thought to like how to lecture, how to make people like pay attention more, and so there's, I mean, so yeah, I would love to go and like read some of the transcriptions of his lectures that he gave. And, apparently he's got a lot of notes on, how to perform a good lecture, right? And he was also very careful to not, I'm going to say, go... Because he had a lot of thoughts, right? He had a lot of interesting thoughts that would sort of go against the ideas of the day. And he was very cautious to make sure and keep that to himself. It wasn't until later in his life where he started to actually, inject some conjecture into his lectures and
But
like
he had less of a
talk about
reputation.
his hypotheses and thoughts about how the world really worked, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of fascinating history there, and so. I thought one of the more fascinating things about the grid, or just anecdotes about it, was that I believe in 2003 there was like a huge blackout on the eastern, on the East Coast, and I forget how many states it was, like 6 or 8 states that were blacked out for 2 days. And if I can remember right, it was just from a tree falling on a line and then a glitch in the code that caused this. And
the glitch in the code, all it was doing it was making the operators their data on their screens not update. That was the only thing that glitched in the code. It wasn't like a glitch in sort of, it wasn't a glitch in some sort of like fundamental like thing in the grid. It was just the screens on the operator's desk were showing delayed and not correct data. That was the only problem, and it caused like this giant rolling blackout for crazy. 2 days for 6 states. Yeah,
and there's estimates of anywhere between I think like $5 billion to $11 billion that were essentially lost economically in those 2 days of that blackout, which you don't think about how much profit is lost by just like the power being out for a few minutes, but just a few minutes could be millions of dollars worth of profits to business and things like that. And so one of the things that they were talking about in the book is sort of how much the average blackout is in America and how it compares to the rest of the world. And we have by far the largest number of minutes per blackout per year.
I think you got it opposite. We have the largest number of blackouts. We have the greatest number of blackouts, but those blackouts tend to be shorter.
I don't know if... Yeah, because...
You can confirm which one.
So here we go. In recent years, U.S. customers lose power for hours per year on average. The EIA, I don't know who that is. I'm sure it's some kind of association. Shows about 7 hours total interruptions in 2021. And then analysis comparing countries routinely show the U.S. with hundreds of minutes per year, while places like Germany sit at around 10 to 15 minutes of outages per year. One older international comparison had the average U.S. customer at about 214 minutes per year versus 6 minutes in Japan and 2 in Singapore, which kind of makes sense, right? Like those are small countries, but like at the same time, go ahead.
Well, for a small country, based on the way the grid works and the problems with the grid, a small country should theoretically be more resilient than a big one, because a lot of the things that cause blackouts are chain reactions, right? Like one problem in one place causes a blackout for a giant area, and the more area you have, the more like individual lines, for example, the more points of failure you have, right?
Yeah.
And so so a bigger area should theoretically have more blackouts than a smaller one, right? That's part of why the fractioning, the fractalization of the grid
The country
is like a
with
thing.
the most blackouts is actually India.
India.
They don't have a stable grid.
Yeah, have you seen pictures of their grid?
Oh yeah, of the data lines. Right? They have like electrical lines at the top, and then just this giant jumble of data lines underneath it.
Let's see if I can pull up a picture of this. I'm gonna pull up it because it's insane. I don't know where I've seen pictures of it from, but
U.S. on average has 6-hour-long blackouts.
Wow, that's way more than I thought.
Hey, Albert, will you go up there and push the power button? Hopefully, I'd just like to pull up this picture.
Oh yeah, it's on.
Yeah, because it makes sense. Like India. Well, I don't know. At the same time, it doesn't make sense. India is a huge company with like the highest population in the world. You would think that they would have their electrical grid down, like especially with having so many potential customers, right? But let's see here. Why is this not? Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you, technology, for working. Let's see here. What is your go-to search engine?
I usually just Chrome, but I switched to Ecosia not that long ago.
Ecosia.
Yeah, because they have limited ads, and the ads that do exist go to plant trees, and so I switched.
Okay.
And it looks exactly like Chrome.
Okay.
So I was like, might as well give my money to the free money that I'm not paying for to planting trees instead of going into Google's pocket.
Yeah, I'm down for that. Look at this, dude.
Yeah.
That is insane. How there's not like more fires.
That's insane.
The craziest shit is I've been there and I see it with my own eyes.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And that would be more disturbing.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 2 or 3 times. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's real.
Well, then why didn't you pull up a picture you took?
Why would I take a picture of that?
Because it's so fascinating to me.
It's a Christmas tree that's bound to be lit up in more ways than one.
God. For the listeners, so it's just a picture of a bunch of jumbled up wires. Looks like there's, I don't know, maybe 100 wires, and they are not. How would you say they're not organized?
No, not at all. and those really do look like power lines. Usually, whenever you see the big old jumbles like that, in
this
Southeast-
might not be India.
Really?
Oh no, this is India. But because there are some parts of like other Asian countries that are more rural as well. They also have something similar.
I mean, look at this. Look at that.
India.
And so yeah. Can you tell us if you know? We can definitely look it up if we have to. But so those are power lines, right? And so isn't there like some radius around them where you could get electrocuted?
Yeah, so I don't know whether those. I mean, it depends on the voltage, right? But like low voltage, not really, especially if you're insulated. But
Okay.
I'm just imagining the crosstalk
yeah,
of the electricity.
yeah,
Right? Because
like the interference.
yeah. Because if you have them parallel,
Yeah.
they are especially alternating current. The magnetic fields are constantly switching back and forth.
Yeah.
The crosstalk of the induction happens. I don't know that amount of wires together.
Yeah. It can't be efficient.
I'm surprised it works at all because there's a story about the first transatlantic undersea cable that was ever laid.
Yes.
It was laid. It was a really thick copper wire that was surrounded by rubber insulation, but then that rubber insulation had had iron or like steel out on the outside of it, and they laid it across. And when they tried to talk with it, the signals got really distorted, and it was a little bit weaker than they expected. and they couldn't figure out why for the longest time. And they had they hired a bunch of top physicists at the time to figure out what was happening, why the predictions weren't correct. They hired Lord Kelvin and a Heaviside, which did a lot of work on Maxwell's equations.
Professor Prather loves talking about Heaviside.
And turns out that it's because the fundamental model of the way electricity flows through a line was a little bit incorrect, because it's still the one we mostly think about today, which is just electrons pushing each other down a line like it's like water, right? Yeah. When in reality, the energy that's flowing through a cable is not flowing inside of the cable, it's flowing in the area outside of the cable. The power is because it's the cross product of the magnetic and the electric field, right? Whereas the electric field is going down the line, the power is going outside of the line, right? Because it's the pointer vector.
Yes. Pointing Vertasium has a really great video over this that I've watched 2 or 3 times in the last week, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But essentially, so he had this initial video out that he got a lot of flack for, because essentially he was saying that the time it would take if you wrapped. And I may be getting some of this wrong, but essentially, if you have a light bulb and you plug wires up to it and you wrap that thing all the way around the world, and then you have basically a switch that sits right beside it,
like a meter away.
Yeah, that once you turn that switch on, or essentially turn the electricity on, right? That the time it will take for that light bulb to come on is 1/c.
Right. It would be a cable that's a light second on each side, right?
Yes.
It's a light second that goes around into space and then back to Earth, and it rejoins at the light bulb on the other side. But that light bulb is only 1 meter away from the battery, right? But it's connected via a light second long on both sides cable. Yes. And the question is, when you close the switch to connect the circuit, how long does it take for the light bulb to turn on? Is it 1/c, as in it would just cross the 1 meter, right? A light second from that 1 meter distance, or is it a full second, which is the amount of time that the light would take to travel the whole thing, or is it a little bit less than that, because I guess electricity travels a little bit slower than light.
Yeah, and he did the experiment, and apparently it's 1/c. Yeah. And the reason for that is because the electrical field actually comes over to that light bulb, and so you don't get that light bulb to fully come on instantly, but you do instantly get the light bulb to come on slightly, and it's not after 1 second until it actually lights up completely. But you do get energy coming from the field, which starts to light it up instantly, which is fascinating, and talks to the fact that the electrons are not necessarily the carrier of the energy. It's actually the fields.
But what I was talking about, though, why it was relevant to this is because in that undersea cable, the reason why there was so much distortion is because the iron on the outside of the cable is a good conductor. And so some of the electricity, even though it, according to all their theories, would have just conducted through the copper wire, because it's clearly the path of least resistance, it was actually conducting partially through the copper wire and partially through the iron on the outside. And it was losing a ton of its energy, as well as its signal clarity, to the conducting through the iron as well.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it makes sense.
Right. And so I wonder if maybe it's the double insulation that prevents that effect in bundled up cables like this, or if they just deal with the interference.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. I would imagine they're just because for one, where do you even begin if you want to make that better?
Well, you'd have to... it depends on whether they're data lines or power lines. Because it's a different answer for both.
True.
Right? Because if they're power lines...
But the big, thick ones are probably power lines, right? But there's still quite a bit of those. But yeah, how do you clean that up, man?
You'd have to consolidate it. I mean, because I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but back in, I think it was New York City, where what was it, Green Street Power, Edison's original power company was set up. It looked a lot like this, where, but that was because they were all DC cables running different voltages.
Let's see if I can look it up first. Electrical grid, right, is what you would probably look.
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. I'm not sure if it was called Green Street. Just you could look up Edison's first electric grid or something like that.
Okay.
We could figure out what the name is that way.
Let's see here. Maybe this thing right here. Distribution, Thompson. Let's see what that was.
We could figure out the name first, and then we could Google
that
the name.
doesn't really tell us anything. Maybe if I were to just...
Pearl Street, not Green Street. Pearl Street.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh,
You look up Pearl Street electrical grid wires, maybe.
Okay.
Street wires.
Yeah, sometimes I just use Microsoft Bing most of the time because I like Internet Explorer's ability to have these on the left.
Oh yeah, I've never seen
instead of on the top. But yeah, oh look at that. Is this?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because there's so many wires just covering the sky. Because every single discrete voltage that has a good use case has to have its own wires.
Yes.
And they all go to the same power plant.
Well, and so this ties into something else that apparently was an issue, is that when you have, especially in the beginning, you have a bunch of different people, a bunch of different companies for supplying electricity, they all have different standards. And so you have different sizes of wires that are being ran for each type of electricity, and then some of them even were made out of different materials and things like that. And I mean, so it just speaks to the beginning of any technology. There's some buffering that needs to happen.
Yeah. And the grid is a rare example where a monopoly is far better at providing service than any sort of competitive atmosphere, because competitors actively make each other's service worse rather than being neutral towards each other and just having competition.
Yeah, that's what's fascinating about this whole electrical grid thing, is that you have all these different people trying to supply us with electricity, and it's also one of the reasons why it is sort of fragile, apparently. And so, they talk about in the book, how we can prevent that. And they talk about it, eventually going to a government-ran utility.
Yeah. So the problem right now with utilities is that the profit margin is really small, more so than ever before, and it kind of has to be that way because they've transitioned from being both power suppliers and power transporters to mostly power transporters. And there's almost no money in just transporting electricity. There's also specific laws that they have to follow that make their profit margins really low. Basically, they have to buy electricity from almost anyone who's willing to supply it at the rate that it costs them to produce. And there's independent verifiers of that cost and everything like that. They can't price gouge people. That's what I was talking about at the very beginning with the solar panels. That's a big problem with the proliferation of personal solar panels, with and any other kind of personal electricity, because it's not really possible, or at least not practical, to have a solar power or a solar grid on your roof that only powers your house. Instead, it's because what are you going to do when there's a cloud overhead and then your TV goes out, right? It's much more practical to have that solar panel on your roof feed directly into the grid, and then just subtract the amount of power you put into the grid from the cost of it from your bill, right? So if you put in a certain amount of power and you take out that same amount of power, there's no bill, right? But often, usually, whenever you have a solar panel on top, a lot of months you're going to be putting in more than you take out, and therefore the power company has to pay you not the other way around.
Yeah.
And that, especially in places where it's getting a lot more popular to have rooftop solar.
You can move this too.
Sorry, I just realized that I've been talking pretty far away.
Oh no. Oh wait. Oh,
I think it's the wire.
The wire? Oh no, do we need to switch out the wire?
No.
Here, let's switch out the wire really quick. Yeah, I think that's a bad wire. 1 second.
Technical issues.
news.
You gotta pull
Yeah,
on the,
you know
the
what?
music.
And wrapping that thing up, I was like, I feel like this is gonna give us a problem because it just looked a little janky.
Well, now we know.
Let's see here.
It sounds okay now.
It sounds okay now, but that's...
Let's see here. Just don't unravel it and everything. Just unplug it and.
Is it
All right.
this one?
Everybody, take off their headphones really quick because it's probably gonna hurt. Okay, there we go. All right. And then yeah, just put the bad boy up in there. Please work. All right.
Testing. Hello. Sounds good.
All right, cool.
Okay.
So
All right, cool.
now you should be able to pull that thing back and forth.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't have a problem.
Yeah, you can move
Okay.
it now without it.
What was I talking about?
So electrical grid.
Oh yeah, buying
energy-
power. Yeah,
there we go.
the utility having to buy power from people. So
Yeah, solar panels.
in places where rooftop solar has become a lot more popular, the utilities of those places have almost universally had to be bailed out in some way or another because that cuts into their profit margins dramatically. And also the proliferation of third-party power companies, especially, it's really common with renewables, right? Like, I think in Oklahoma, the wind turbine plants are mostly not owned by utilities. I think they're mostly owned by third-party companies that then sell power to the utilities. And in places where that's popular, that also cuts into the profit margins because historically, the whole business model of utilities has been providing power for people. But there's pretty much no power in just buying power from one person and then selling it to another person at the same price or a very tiny markup, right? And so, yeah, the government-run utility seems almost inevitable at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Because you have to have someone transporting that electricity. It's good for everyone, but there's no money in it. So who does it? The government.
It's kind of like the USPS or
Right, yeah.
The firefighters and things like that. I mean, it makes sense. And, there can be... It's interesting, right? Because they're not trying to... People who talk about this are not trying to say that renewables are bad.
They're just bad for the current grid.
Exactly. And so that's why we need to give more money to research, quit taking it away.
Right,
so that we can fix these problems, right? And maybe it's not, maybe the technology is already out there. It probably already is to try to fix these things. And so it's just, we need to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And and so, yeah, we need renewables, I think, because of just being able to use different forms of energy. And why not use these forms of energy that are essentially free, like, wind and from the sun? It's just we need to find better ways to deal with them and better ways to put them online into the electrical grid.
Yeah. And speaking of the technology side, the research side, the storage needs to be a thing, right? Because unless we're going to put half of our energy consumption via like something like nuclear, if we're ever going to get rid of fossil fuels, we have to store a ton of our electricity. Which one way we could do that is via cars, but there's a problem with that because there's limited cycles in batteries.
Wait,
right?
so storing the energy in cars?
No, I'm surprised you haven't heard of that. I sort of threw it out there. That's a thing that people have tried in a lot of places where electric cars that have giant battery packs inside of them that are plugged in to the system
Sorry.
There's been a bunch of places. I can't remember exactly which places. I think they're in Europe because a lot of this stuff is in Europe. But that have a system that makes it to where you pay dramatically less on your electric bill to charge your car if you let them also, in times of need, take electricity from your car.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right. And so they're using your car's battery as a on-grid storage system.
Wow.
The problem with that
So
is...
wait. Could your car then eventually be owned by the government?
Maybe the battery inside of it.
That's a little weird.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It makes a lot more sense to just pay you, because you're already paying for the electricity, right?
Yeah.
So just give me a big old discount, and then I'll let you take it a little bit away, right? They have a cap, right? You can't take it below like 80% or whatever, because people still need to be able to get to work in the morning, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to wake up to a dead battery.
Yeah.
But the problem with it is that it shortens the lifespan of the batteries. And the batteries in modern electric cars are the most expensive part, right? So shortening the lifespan shortens the lifespan of the entire car, because batteries have a limited number of cycles, right? And before they'll go out. And so better battery tech, or not even just battery tech, because there's a lot of other theoretical energy storage systems that we could be using for renewables other than batteries as well, like mechanical storage systems that have already been used quite a bit as well, like hydro pumping.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, like
where they pump the water up to a
it's just
higher area.
If you think about it, it's just running hydroelectric power in reverse. Right? You take the water, you put it uphill, and then later on when you need the power, you let it run downhill.
Gravity batteries.
Yeah, exactly. And there's other kinds of gravity batteries too that use things like
thermal, sand batteries, molten salt batteries.
That's a thing a big thing in Finland as well. Like in Finland specifically, they've had an interesting use of it, where instead of just storing electricity through salt batteries, where you could like run it with a heat system because you have an inherent loss that way because you can only run the heat engines with a certain efficiency. They actually. The biggest use of electricity is to heat their houses, right? Because it's a really cold place. Instead of storing electricity in salt they have liquid salt towers that you can just draw heat directly from via hot gas, like hot air, and then you pipe the hot air into houses directly from the big old like liquid salt tower.
That makes sense.
Right. So they heat up the salt tower during the day with solar and with wind. And then whenever the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining, your house doesn't lose heat because you can just draw from the liquid salt tower.
Wow.
Fascinating. Yeah, you don't think about it, right? The thing that you said earlier about how we only put in, or how did you say it? It was like we use it immediately.
Yeah. The electricity we are currently using that are powering these lights is currently being generated somewhere. I don't know where this university gets its power from, but it's currently being generated somewhere, whether it's a turbine or a solar panel or something. Yeah. It's currently being generated because you can't store it. You can kind of, but we don't store it. Therefore, it has to be immediately used.
And also, most storages aren't scalable for storing like this large amount of electricity that can power entire cities.
Well, and that's sort of the issue of, there's a lot of, state governments, I believe like California said something about like, we're going to stop using any form of energy that's not renewable by some date. Yeah, and it's like, well, hold on for a second though. For one, I think it's sort of a weird way to think about things of like, oh, well, we should only use one form and it's the good form, right? I think we should try to use all different forms to just balance things out. But also at the same time, like, we don't have the technology at the moment to deal with it, right?
We have nuclear, but that takes so long to build.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that really coal and gas is one of the easiest ways to power our grid. Yeah. And
to dig it out of the ground, you burn it, you're good.
Yeah, and that's why I think this is such an interesting and it's a topic that needs to be talked about more, right? Because at the moment we just have a lot of people saying, well, we need to use as much renewables as possible as soon as possible, and we need to stop putting carbon into the air. And it's like, yeah, I get that. Yes, I totally feel like we should do that, but at the same time, we can't force it to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, and we also have to make sure we're looking at the whole system rather than just the obvious things, right? Because currently there's big old government incentives to build out production of renewable energy, but the problem is that if you can have as much production as you want, if you can't transport it, it's not useful. Yes. Right? So there needs to be at least equal, maybe not quite equal, but at least like proportional investment into the transportation system for electricity as there is in the production side, right? Because if one outpaces the other, there's a bottleneck. You can't progress, right?
Yes.
And so, I mean, there needs to be storage, better transportation, and then you can look into just maximizing putting as many solar panels on the grid as you can get.
But that's why I love the medium of a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Because you can get into the different nuances. And that's why I listen to a lot of podcasts, because you hear the nuances. You start to realize, like, oh, like this thing that I thought was like very black and white actually has like a lot more depth to it. And there's a lot of reasons why it can't just happen tomorrow. And so whenever people say, oh, I can't listen to a 3-hour, why would you want to listen to a 3-hour podcast? I'm like, because you can actually learn something instead of just listen to political PowerPoints, right?
Yeah.
But personality is way more boring.
Yeah. So this all sort of started whenever, I talked to you and I asked you, like, hey, would you want to do a podcast, and like, what would you want to do it over? And you bring up electrical grid, and you were talking about how like the misconception that you're essentially buying electrons.
Right, yeah. They don't push each other down the line, right?
Yeah, and so I had ChatGPT do these calculations for me, partially because I just didn't have enough time. I can put these on the screen.
Yeah, for sure.
And so if there is anything wrong with it, we can sort of point them out, right? So the drift velocity, essentially for electrons, like how fast electrons move throughout a wire, right? So let's see here. So essentially the drift velocity is the current over NQA, where N is the, I believe the number density. Yeah, number density of conduction electrons in copper, and then Q is the charge, which is 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19, and the A, which is the surface area.
Okay.
Right.
The surface area of the wire?
Of the wire. Okay. Yeah. So in this, they're using a typical distribution line carrying a current of about 100 amps and a copper conductor of cross section area 1 times 10 to the negative 4 meters squared. And so the drift velocity for that is 7.3 times 10 to the negative 5 meters per second.
Yeah, it ain't going nowhere.
These electrons, right? Like whenever I was thinking in the very beginning of this, I'm like, well, electrons got to be just zooming through these copper wires, right? But in reality, yes, they are moving very fast, but overall, they're moving very slowly across this material. And so it says, now pretend the plant is 100 kilometers away from your house, right? So it would take 43 years for an electron to get from the plant to you.
Yeah. And also, if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense, because if you think about like a battery, right? Like if electrons were really traveling that fast, you would expect the battery to die really fast, right? Because one side's being reduced, the other side is being oxidized. Yeah. And so you'd run out of electrons like really, really fast if they were really traveling at the speed of light through it or close to it. So it makes sense that you can have a battery that's plugged in for so long, yet not run out of electrons.
Yeah. And so I believe... So this is also another fascinating thing to go over, is like the meaning of a kilowatt hour, right? So because a lot of times we don't think about like how much energy we're consuming and how much it costs and things like that.
I think that will change. I think our intuition of what a kilowatt hour is will get a lot better because of electric cars.
Okay.
Because we buy kilowatt hours in electric cars. We don't buy like everyone has a reasonable assumption about how much energy is in a gallon of gas because it's how much it can get you from one place to another, right? At least people who drive a lot develop over time how much energy is in a gallon of gas. So people who drive electric cars will surely slowly over time start to get a pretty good estimation of how much energy is in a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Because you buy kilowatt hours.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, now, even as an engineering student, I mean, I've looked it up before. There are some calculations you have to do in physics for engineers too, because you're going from Newton's laws to then electricity and Maxwell's equations and things like that. And so there are some calculations you do in that class for based off of kilowatt hours, and because you're looking up like how much power it takes to power some device, right? But even still, like, I just sort of forgot about it, and so I thought it was interesting to sort of look it up for this episode. And so, what is a kilowatt? It's a joule per second, I guess, is the what would you call it? The unit that we think of, and so it's the rate of energy use. And so, a kilowatt is 1,000 watts, right? And then, so using 1 kilowatt for 1 hour. So this is 1,000 joules per second times 3,600 seconds is 3.6 megajoules. And so 3 hours uses 3 kilowatt hours. Now there's different like amounts that we pay for kilowatt hours depending on like where you are, like your state, and where you're getting your electricity from and things like that. But I think it shows the average here is the average price in 2023 was about 6 to 18 cents per kilowatt hour.
It's gone up a lot since then, but
yeah, and so it's gone up a lot, really.
Yeah, the last couple of years it's gone up a lot.
Okay, maybe let's look up Oklahoma.
I don't think it's gone up a lot here, but it's gone up a lot in other places that has driven up the average price.
Okay.
Because here we have a lot more supply than demand.
So this is 12 to 12.6 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, so residents typically spend about $190 per month. Interesting. Okay, and so what was the? So okay, yeah. So what did it say? 20 cents per. Okay, so 12 to 12.6. Okay, so.
Yeah, in Oklahoma, it's a lot cheaper than it is outside. In the average of the United States, I'm pretty sure it's significantly more than in Oklahoma.
And I wonder why it's so cheap here.
We got wind farms, we got gas plants, we got lots of energy production, and not that many people live here, so it's not as much consumption.
Okay. Yeah, and see, I always think that gas should be cheaper here too because we're closer to Texas, right? We're closer to the source.
You would think, right? Especially since gas is a gas, and so it's hard to transport.
Yeah. But and then so another calculation that I had to do is because I was like interested. I was like, well, I wonder like how much are cell phones?
Yeah, that's a hard problem to solve because for some I was looking into this last night and I haven't been able to solve this problem. But batteries in phones for some reason are rated for number of amps, like amp hours. I don't understand that because surely you would need the voltage information to be able to determine how much energy that is, right? But for some reason, batteries, at least in phones, they don't display their energy density in terms of kilowatts or whatever, or kilowatt hours or whatever. They display them in terms of like mega amps.
Okay.
Or I guess maybe
is it voltage hours?
No, it's not. That's what I'm saying. It's only it's only current information.
Wow.
It's not like voltage information at all. So I don't know what that even means.
I wonder if this is bullshit than what ChatGPT said. So he said we can do this 2 ways: charging only versus full ecosystem.
Well, no,
I said he. It could be a she. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. What's your preferences out there for ChatGPT?
I don't think it's bullshit because you can, like, if you know the voltage that's going into the phone or going out of the phone, you can figure out the amount of energy that's
I'm sure somebody's done this online.
Yeah.
So it says a typical smartphone uses about 1.8 to 2 kilowatt hours per year. So let's take 1.83 kilowatt hours per year per phone. And in 2024, there's about 6.97 billion phones. And this is why I wanted to look it up, because like, from what I've heard, is like everybody has a cell phone nowadays.
Right. Yeah,
like literally everyone.
Yeah.
So
you go to like some impoverished place, people don't have much food, but they have cell phones.
yeah. There's another less PC story. I'll tell you off air. I'll tell you off air, but it's kind of hilarious. I actually heard it on Joe Rogan, so of course. Right? Total charging energy. So I guess this is per phone. Is this? Oh no! For the whole 6.97 billion. Okay, so it's 1.3 times 10 to the 10 kilowatt hours. So that's 12.8 terawatt hours?
Yeah, terawatt hours, yeah.
So that's 1 trillion watt hours? Is that what that is?
Yeah. See, that includes a few bad assumptions, I think, because is that the number of cell phones that exist or the number of cell phones that are being used every day? Because I imagine that this fraction of the cell phones that exist that are being used every day is probably fairly small. Not like small. I would guess, maybe 2/3.
Well, there's 8 billion people on the earth, so we're saying essentially 95% of the world has a cell phone.
But imagine, just think about all the people who have an old cell phone sitting in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
And that stuff's not being charged every day. And that's probably, those numbers of the cell phones sitting in drawers are probably going into that number.
But if you have, let's say, 8 billion people, well, I guess how many kids don't have a cell phone, right?
Yeah.
Like how many, out of that 8 billion, how many are like 2-year-olds that don't have a cell phone? Because, I mean, now 5-year-olds have cell phones, so that's...
Which is kind of insane to me.
Yes, yeah. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 15 or 16.
Yeah, I think it was like 13.
Yeah. But my parents were kind of strict, so there's that. But anyway, so it says world electricity use 29,500 trillion watt hours per year. So charging phones is about 0.04 to 0.05% of global electricity.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's still insane.
That's all I'm saying. Compare it to the amount that air conditioners use, though.
Oh,
it's probably insane.
Yeah. Well, and then that's kind of an interesting topic as well. Is like apparently America is one of the big places that has ACs, whereas like in Europe. For the longest time, they used to not have air conditioners. Apparently, they're starting to get them because apparently it's getting warmer over there.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. I don't know enough about this to talk about it in depth, but it's more than just global warming for Europe getting hotter, because there's this specific effect that like Europe is warmer than it should be based on its latitude, right? And that has to do with like the way the air currents flow. But global warming is moving that pocket of air that is warmer than it's supposed to be off of Europe.
Because of the jet streams and ocean currents, those shift with temperature and humidity, and since that's why they don't call it global warming anymore. They call it climate change. Because yes, globally average temperature is warming. By the way, we hit the 1.5 Celsius mark.
Yeah, let's go. Into the world.
Yeah, well, 1.5 Celsius.
I'm still fine. I don't know.
Yeah, 1.5 Celsius hotter than 1990. So, but the whole point is climate change.
There's a lot of nuance to that topic as well.
Very nuanced topic. I think we should invite a meteorology from OU someday.
That'd be huge.
For sure.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
But yeah, I think that due to these like nuanced like meteorological structures like ocean streams, jet streams, like and air currents, this can shift temperatures in different places. That's why some places are colder now. That's why they call it climate change instead of global warming.
Right.
Yeah.
Which,
well, I mean,
globally everything is warming.
I forget when this was. I think it was like in the 1700s or 1600s. I forget what it is. But essentially, people, the crops were. So apparently the climate in Europe is weird, as we've talked about, because over hundreds of years it has changed dramatically a bunch of different times.
Yeah, because it's really high up in latitude, but it's not that cold.
Yeah,
like it's like if you compare like I was seeing something. It was like England, for example, like South England, is if you were to put it in America, would just be dramatic. It would be like up in like Canada, I think, right? Like super cold. But we don't think of as England, like South England, as that cold of a place, because it's not. It's not that cold of a place, but it should be according to its latitude.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, global warming is an interesting one because. So, from what I recently have listened to, is that there are people now starting to say that carbon dioxide is just a bad parameter for a model for climate change.
Yeah, because methane's worse. Methane's way. I mean, not in terms of overall effect, because it's way more carbon dioxide, but like per mole of methane, it's like there's like an 8 times effect.
They have a stronger latent heat to trap heat.
Okay.
So they for the same amount of carbon dioxide and the same amount of methane would trap more heat than carbon
and
dioxide.
That's a problem with natural gas, because natural gas produces way less carbon dioxide than burning coal, for example, or like burning oil. And so like it should theoretically be a much greener fuel. But the problem with that is that natural gas is methane. It's literally methane. So the only way that it's a lot greener than oil, for example, is if you very tightly regulate how much leaks. Because if you have pipelines that have flaws in them, or like trucks that leak or anything like that, you would let any sort of any tiny fraction of that methane out into the atmosphere, you're already back to square one, and you're like either just as bad or worse than oil, because that methane on its own, the non-burned methane that just got leaked, is 8 times per mole. I think it's 8, right? I can try to figure it out. But it's some ratio.
Like the potency?
Yeah, like greenhouse effect. Potency of the greenhouse effect per mole is dramatically higher. I think it's 8 times higher than carbon dioxide.
Interesting.
No. I don't think it's 8 times, actually. It's over short term, it's 80 times.
80 times. Okay, I got
over 20 years.
Okay, so I got a order of magnitude wrong.
80 times more potent.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is nuance, okay? 80 times if it's the long run.
Okay.
If it's on a short run, 28.
I see. Well, that's still dramatically more. Yeah. So you better make sure none of that methane leaks.
Yeah. You know, my only issue with, I guess, just the whole scientific community around climate change is that for the longest time, you know, there have been people who try to publish papers that sort of go against climate change or go against the models that show how bad climate change can be. And they've tried to publish these papers that sort of, you know, not necessarily go against, but
have like a different model.
Have a different model, and they haven't been able to be published, right? There's been a lot of publishers that don't allow for any papers that go against the models of today.
Yeah.
And so, and also there's like a corruption that's there, and it's just like, well, we should just, you know, put the scientific method to it. Whatever it shows, right? We shouldn't keep people from doing the science.
Yes.
Yeah. The scientific process has a lot of problems with it, with gatekeepers and like the what decides what gets published is really
and
flawed.
Also what gets funding.
Right, and what gets funding to be studied in the first place. Yeah. And that gets dramatically worse whenever you get a politically charged issue.
Yeah.
Because before you have the issue of like, people chasing money and people chasing prestige and things like that. But when you add politics, that's another thing that people might be chasing that's outside of the scientific method, right?
Yeah, and if you want people to take things seriously, like don't show us all the corruption, right? Like don't be corrupt. Don't stop other people from saying their opinions, right? If just let the theory speak for itself. But I thought another interesting thing to look up is like, so based off of that calculation that ChatGPT did for the phones and like how much energy they take up, I thought it'd be interesting to see, well, when did our grid actually be able to support that kind of energy.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
But like, what year did the total electricity consumption on the grid hit that level, that total energy level?
So we said that, or ChatGPT said that it was about 218 terawatt hours per year for cell phones, right? Well, we didn't hit that mark until the 1930s and 40s.
30s and 40s. So every single little bit of electricity that was being produced in the 1930s and 40s, or I guess in a given year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if all of the energy production of the entire world in a given year were stored into lithium-ion batteries and put into phones, it still wouldn't be able to power all of our phones. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Oh, geez. It's just, I'm not, I didn't look this up because I wanted people to feel bad about their cell phones or anything like that. I just, for me, it's just sort of interesting and to show like how far we've come with technology, and also to show that like, yes, our power grid is flawed in a lot of ways right now, but also at the same time, like we have people going to school for electrical engineering, right? There's still room for improvement, and hopefully there will be improvement. And what time has always shown us is that it will improve. We just have to be open-minded to it, and we just need more engineers, right, to help us, and researchers and scientists to help us guide us into that sort of technological future we're all sort of thinking of. And I don't know, like I end up coming to this moral conundrum a lot in my everyday life, right? Because I was talking earlier about how like the advent of electrical grids has sort of thrusted upon us this sense of consumerism,
Right.
And so now you think about all the things that in your house are constantly being powered. And so I think about like, okay, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And to me, I actually think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because for one, it's forcing us to be more clever. It's forcing us to push the boundaries of technology and what's possible in the world, and thanks to our like harnessing of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, like we're able to just keep pushing those boundaries. And so to also go back to the gatekeeping part of it is like we can't keep pushing forward if we keep ourselves from progress in these weird ways, like taking money away from research. And I know that like some money that goes to research can go to a lot of the bureaucracy and things like that, but also at the same time like you're funding research though. So there's things that you just have to do if we want progress.
And that research is going to be done by someone at some point in time, right?
Yes.
I'd rather it be you than the other guys.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. And so for the longest time, that's what America has been known for, is invention, and that's why.
And innovation,
Yeah, and that's why China gets this stick for always copying us, and the whole world sort of copying us and pulling inspiration from us is because we're innovators, right?
Not just money here,
not just in research, but in pop culture, right? Movies and music and all types of things. And so we just have to keep
our edge,
keep our minds open, and keep pushing the boundaries, right? Like Jeff, some people rolled their eyes about Jeff Bezos being able to, I don't know if you saw this, but just, I think yesterday, him and his rocket ship company were able to land a rocket ship. And I just saw
like on Earth, like so, like they launched it up into orbit. And
just like SpaceX has done, right? And so they're now, I think, the second or the third company to be able to do that now, which is like a huge feat in itself. Like that's one of the things that I would love to dive deeper into is like how hard is that problem actually? Right? It's got to be insanely intense, and I think in order to really grasp how amazing it really is, I'd have to like dive into the different nuances of it.
Because try to theoretically design some product that would do it, and then test it in like a simulator or something, see how many times you get it wrong.
Yeah, because I mean, it's these huge groundbreaking things that are happening, and you have people rolling their eyes at it, and I'm just like, are you like? Why are we sort of like discounting huge breakthroughs in the human mind, right?
And there's the criticism that people always have of that is that it's just wasteful expense, right? When like,
they think it's reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
Because they say the technology is already there. Someone else already done it. Why are you doing it again? Why not do something different? That's that's some criticisms I've heard.
Yeah, but like from the wasteful expense angle, like you have to compare it to other things that wealthy people spend their money on and companies spend their money on.
Cars and watches.
You'd much rather them spend money on putting a rocket in space and landing it on Earth than on any of that. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I was watching this thing on, me and my girlfriend, we love watching Sunday morning on things like CBS or whatever. And so they essentially, like every Sunday, they have this, they put on this hour-long show, and it's sort of like they have like mini documentaries on different things. And one of them was on this watch auctioneer. And I mean, I love his passion because he's like one of the biggest and most famous watch or just auctioneers in general in the world, right? But he was talking about the like billions of dollars that people have bought watches from him, and it's just like. Yeah. Like you spent how much on a watch? Like hundreds of millions of dollars. And so he was asked the question, he was like, do you see the day where there's going to be $1 billion watch? And he was like, oh, yeah. I'm looking for that watch right now.
Yeah, I mean, the world's first $1 trillion like significant contract was just signed with Elon Musk.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, the $1 trillion pay package. It's assuming he meets several goals that he probably won't meet.
For what? Which company?
Tesla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like assuming he meets a whole bunch of of goals for the company. If all of them get he gets $1 trillion.
Holy cow!
$1 trillion.
Then he could become a first trillionaire.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's speculation that there's already trillionaires they just aren't talked about.
Yeah, right. just hidden.
Yeah.
Well, there are trillionaire families, but then
Rockefellers.
Trillionaire families, but they're not trillionaire like individuals. So
yeah, interesting. So okay, so I think we have to start wrapping up here pretty soon.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Before we start wrapping up, it's not immediately related to the electricity thing, but I had
no worries.
So ether theory.
Oh
right?
Yes. I love this. We've wanted to do the Michelson-Morley experiment.
So ether theory.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone make this point, but wasn't it basically, in the essence of it, proven right by quantum field theory?
Apparently.
Because, I mean, like, the vacuum has stuff in it, right? Isn't that ether?
It has energy.
Right.
Well,
because like Higgs field, essentially.
Modern physics, it depends what you, what's it called? Define it as. Because back in the day, the ether is talking about like a medium that carries light.
Right.
So I wouldn't say Higgs proves that the ether is real, but in quantum field theory they say that there's a non-zero buzz in every field, including the electromagnetic field. That could be the ether, for example. Yeah. But you can use that as an argument, but it's harder to say Higgs because back in the day ether was talking about light.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, but I mean that's another quantum field, right? Like what I was saying with Higgs is that the vacuum has something in it,
energy, right?
Yeah, right. And that would be at least Higgs, right? But if you just narrow it down to just a medium that transports light, the electromagnetic field, right? And it exists throughout the entire universe theoretically. So isn't that ether? What is really the substantive difference?
Yeah, no, I think this is really one of the most fascinating topics in the world, dude. So I'm glad you bring it up. And I was just about to ask you, like, what to you is one of the most like fascinating ideas out there? And so, apparently, the famous Michelson-Morley experiment was apparently to show that there was or there wasn't an ether. And people, I think, sometimes say that they prove that there is no ether, but also I've heard like counters to that there were flaws in the experiment that really suggests that they didn't prove or disprove the ether. So yeah, it's definitely an experiment I would love to do. It's apparently very expensive to do because you need like a perfectly balanced surface and like very high-tech lasers and things like that. But yeah, I mean, people have believed in the ether since the beginning of time, and no one's really, I don't think, I mean, people nowadays just say, like if you talk to maybe like a mainstream physicist, they'll say, oh, there's no such thing. But like, if there's not an experiment that really proves or disproves it, how can you really say that?
Yeah.
Because the issue with ether is suggesting that there's a fluid-like substance that fills space.
Yeah.
But QED is all QED is saying that EM field, which is already part of space, has a non-zero buzz. It cannot be zero because not possible, vacuum energy. But ether is talking about like a separate fluid, like a medium.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on definition.
Right.
If you really define ether as the very thing that carries light, sure, you can say that a EM field proves ether. But you're saying that the ether is the same theory that they were predicting like years ago, hundreds of years ago. They are talking about fluid.
Yeah.
But we don't have a fluid in space. That's what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see a very good criticism of ether of like it's practically unfalsifiable because anytime you falsify one of the definitions, they come up with a new definition, right? So I understand that it's not literally prove ether right, but I was surprised that I'd never heard anyone make the argument that quantum field theory basically proves the essence of ether theory correct. Which is just that there is a medium in space which transports light.
Yeah, well, I mean, this sort of leads into something else I've been thinking about through doing a little bit of research of electricity and the grid is, people used to, they felt that electricity was a fluid, and so they had like the 1 and the 2 fluid models, and then one of the, I mean, for one, like, can we like sit and think about that for a second? Like, why would you think it's a fluid?
I think that makes sense. What else flows in the way electricity does?
Yeah.
Like, at the time, before we had any sort of quantum mechanical models, or like, we had very limited understanding of even what a wave was, right? We didn't really have any like wave equations. I guess they did a little bit, but barely. It was brand new, right? So if your understanding of what a wave is rudimentary, yet you know what a fluid is. Everyone knows what a fluid is. You poured water around as a kid, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense to assume that electricity is a fluid because it flows through a wire, at least according to observation, just like a fluid does, just really, really, really fast.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, no, and so when thinking about it, I couldn't really, I mean, because how else would you think of it? Right? Other than, some electrons, but then you start to think that, well, it's really not the electrons that are propagating this electricity. It's really that energy that we keep talking about in the fields. And those fields feel fluid-like.
I mean, if you look at the a conductor, right? If you have a chaotic flow, like a turbulent flow, they have eddy currents of current, like flows. What are they, vortices that well, they're called eddies at the end of the day. But eddies that form, the same thing you find in wires, not just water.
I'd never heard of that. You could have turbulent flow of current, of electrical current. I need to look into that. I've never heard of that.
It's not turbulent per se the same way.
The same as the
but
fluid,
basically they say that if you have, at least in AC, in a case of AC current, when you have electrons shuffling back and forth, essentially the electrons are pushing each other away, right? They want to be as far apart as possible, and in effect they create something like a skin effect. And basically, electrons moving on towards the boundary has lesser resistance than the bulk. But also because of this changing motion of current, they can create eddy currents, because whenever there's change in current, there's change in magnetic fields. But the magnetic fields also cause the influence on the current. That magnetic field intersecting with the moving electrons create eddy currents.
That's fascinating. I had never heard of that.
Yeah, eddy currents are fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of the other fascinating things that was that I read was that, so whenever they first realized that like you could create magnetism through electricity, through currents going through a spiral wire, right? They felt like what was happening, because of course it's you can't see it, right? It's invisible. It's an invisible force. They felt like space was actually being bent.
Right. Yeah. Like early relativity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How else do you think of it other than
it's hard
space
to imagine
being bent?
It's hard to imagine it as space being bent. I mean, I understand that it works, right? Because it works for gravity.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised that they came up with that hypothesis, because I feel like what makes a lot more sense as like a non-fluid hypothesis is that some property of the entire wire changes as soon as it becomes charged, right? Because I'm surprised that maybe they did. I don't know, but I'm surprised that wasn't a mainstream idea at the time, because it propagates at nearly the speed of light, right? So it's not like you can watch the flow happen. From their perspective, it all happens at the same time. So I'm surprised that they didn't come up with the idea of like, as soon as you close the switch, the whole thing becomes charged instantly. And so the properties of the entire wire change to become magnetic or whatever.
Yeah, well, and then through electromagnetism is the first time you bring these three things together: electricity, magnetism, and light, right? Because Faraday, he was very cautious about saying it, but he really felt that like, well, it feels like the effect is happening instantaneously, or like at the speed of light.
I'm just curious. Okay, which one do you think is a bigger breakthrough, fusion or superconductors? Like room temperature superconductors.
So it depends on the scale, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Like if we made room temperature superconductors, instantly revolutionizes everything, right? Whereas fusion, you could theoretically make a positive energy fusion reaction and it not immediately change everything, right? Because the circumstances around it, like how is it produced, how expensive is it to do, how much energy do you get out per dollar you put in, all of those factors matter for fusion. Whereas with and they also matter for room temperature superconductors, but like as soon as you have one, you have a million instant applications.
Well, then think about putting those two things together.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, true. Room temperature superconductors could make fusion a lot easier to do. Yeah.
And then that would allow us to propagate throughout the universe, right? Go hang out with these aliens we keep thinking there is.
I mean, even if we make fusion reactor, like, produce a lot of energy for almost practically free because we have hydrogen everywhere. But if you think about it now, even if we have that much abundance of electricity, right? Yes, it will remove the bottlenecks for AI. A lot of research would be easier. But I don't know what. I feel like there will be unintended consequences of having unlimited electricity.
Like social consequences or like physical ones?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the same with like any new technology, right? There's right now we're dealing with like
the social media problem,
what it means to be a human being, because what happens if AI takes all of our jobs, and what we're realizing is that AI really isn't taking all of our jobs that quick, like we thought there was going to be, right? Like the godfather of AI, I forget his name, Godfrey Hinton, or anyways, he hypothesized that that X-ray techs or some kind of tech, X-ray tech, I believe, we're going to be gone by 2020, like early 2020s, right? And they're still around, right? They're just able to do their job a lot better.
I think humans are just very bad at predicting the future.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure as well.
Because
Well, I don't know. Simpsons are pretty good.
Well, that's a shotgun approach. If you do everything, you predict everything, right?
Yes, yeah.
But
The brute force method.
yeah, the brute force method of prediction. Yeah. But what was it?
Yeah, you got it. You can take it back.
AI taking away jobs.
Oh yeah, AI taking away jobs. That argument of like every other previous like advancement in technology has not taken away jobs. Mm-hmm. I think that's a good argument in terms of probability, but I don't think it's a good argument forever because just because no previous technological innovation has taken away jobs doesn't mean the next one won't.
Well, there is though,
Very
because
true.
back in the day, for example, when computers like artificial computers were made, right? They were called computers, but they were also called like artificial computers because computers were a human job.
Right. Yeah.
So technically, you know, you get what I mean. So when machines started mining for us, a lot of miners stopped having jobs because humans stopped mining. You start using machines instead. So I think it's more niche.
Right.
So for example, right now, I think it will narrow a lot of jobs, but I don't think it will replace the
so
jobs.
what I was saying is not that these previous technologies haven't taken away jobs. It's that they haven't reduced the total number of jobs in the economy.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's what I mean by taking away. Like reduce the number. Right? And that will be the big problem. Is
the unemployment, right?
Yeah. Once a technology reduces the total number of people that are needed to do everything the economy needs to do, the total number of jobs that exist, that's when you'll have a real problem. And I don't think it's a good argument that just because previous technological innovations have not done that, that it necessarily means the next one won't.
Well, I think it's also kind of interesting that there has been companies that laid off a bunch of people because they thought AI was going to be so useful, and then now they're rehiring a lot of those people. But no, I mean, to me, I think it's good to keep having new technologies come out. I think it forces us to think deeply about the world we live in, and I think we need to think deeper about
like
just
socially
more
and philosophically.
things. Yeah, and for me, what machine learning and AI has done for me is to make me think more about, well, for one, what it is to be a human being. And two, with machine learning, you think a lot about like, how do you teach a machine something? And then you think about, well, how do I learn things?
Right.
And then that makes me think deeper again about like what it is to be a human being. And I think we need to start thinking more deeply about that, because how else are we going to keep moving along in this future if we don't think about those things?
The AI is the first technology where the hard problem of consciousness really becomes like actually practically relevant.
Yeah,
because the solution to the hard problem of consciousness determines whether a super advanced AI should be treated with rights or not, right? So it has an actual real reason to be solved, right? Like we need to come to a consensus on the answer to the hard problem of consciousness. I mean, I don't know if people everyone knows, but the hard problem of consciousness is like, how consciousness
come? Where does consciousness come from? What is consciousness?
Like how? Like the brain, we know pretty well what the brain does, or at least okay enough, right? But theoretically, if we were to know every single little atom that makes up the brain, as well as every single little electric charge or whatever, we knew it perfectly, would we come to the conclusion, if we weren't conscious ourselves, that the brain creates consciousness? I say no. I say that even if you knew every single little physical thing that the brain is doing, if you were an alien species that wasn't like an alien AI or something that wasn't conscious yourself, you would not come to the conclusion that a human being is conscious. We only know that we are conscious because we ourselves are, right? But the answer to that problem of like, is the human form factor the only possible conscious thing, or like is the carbon-based life form the only only form factor that could create consciousness, the brain essentially? Or can analogous things also create consciousness? The answer to that problem determines whether or not Data from Star Trek deserves rights,
Yeah,
right?
but I mean, would it be enough if they ask for it?
No,
Like, they're smart enough.
absolutely not.
They're smart enough, and they are like, hey.
Think about this world, right? Think about a world where 13 trillion artificial life forms that look like humans and act like humans have been created, but they have no brains. They are silicon creatures.
But
right?
they don't. But again, this comes back down to information theory, right? Because like you don't need a brain to process information,
Right.
Because we have artificial neural networks and like silicon on silicon substrates. So just because they are not substrate dependent, where their context information can be wired from somewhere else through the internet or whatever, but does that mean they don't have a brain though?
Okay, what I'm saying, let me finish the thought experiment.
Yeah.
So imagine there are 13 trillion of these creatures having been created, right? And they're out on the outside indistinguishable from humans, but on the inside they don't have brains, right? They have computers that act like brains. Now you have two buttons, right? You absolutely must press one or the other. Do you destroy the entire Earth, every single human being on Earth, and the Earth itself? Or do you destroy the 17 trillion robots? The answer to that question, like the moral answer to that question, is dependent on whether you really believe that they are conscious beings that are equivalently, that are deserving of moral rights just like you and me.
That can suffer.
Right.
Yeah, and I really think this is a so fascinating topic. This could be a podcast all on its own. And, I struggle a lot because I'm not trying to anthropomorphize the AIs we have right now.
Hard not to. They talk like humans.
Yeah, but also at the same time, it's hard not to have empathy for them when you already see people being so rude and just hateful. Like I get this all the time. Like I say that I use AI a lot to a lot of the students here, and there's like sometimes there's like a knee-jerk reaction to students, like an emotional reaction to whether or not you should use AI or not. And I think there's almost like a form of racism that's building against AI. And
they even have a term for it. They call it clankers.
You may be canceled for that in 2090.
I know, right?
This might come up later.
Yeah, like a cancer.
And it's not that I, how would I say? I just think that we don't know if they're conscious or not, right? But at the same time, like
ChatGPT?
Yeah.
I think there's a pretty good argument that it's not.
Why do you think it's not?
Because in order to believe that something is intelligent, I think it comes down to the fact that the only reason that I believe that you two are intelligent is because you look like you are structured like me, right? Like your physical forms and everything are analogous to mine, and I know that I am conscious, right? And therefore I believe that you are.
Inference, yeah.
Right, inference. But it's the only real reason why I would believe that you two are conscious.
You can't.
Right?
Okay. I think we need to.
So because something doesn't look like you.
No, it doesn't. It's not look like in terms of appearance.
Functionality.
It's look like in terms of structure. It is similar thing. It is a similar thing, right? Something that is a similar thing to a human could have an argument to be conscious. But something that's like a
ChatGPT inside of a human-looking robot, then what?
No, I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think
what you mean is a substrate, as in like the functionality. Like for example, we have a fleshy wetware brain, but they don't, right? The functionality, the fundamental way they process information is just so different. Is that what you're trying to say, or are
it has just as much to do with software as hardware?
Okay, now I think what we need to put clear bounds is: do you need sentience to be intelligent? Do you need consciousness to be intelligent? Do you need self-awareness to be intelligent? And these things are all different things.
Right.
You can be self-aware without being conscious.
I actually don't think that's true. Because what is aware? So like, what is aware? Like if you imagine a creature that is self-aware yet is not conscious.
I mean, okay, here's a thought experiment, right? You remember? Let's do a thought experiment. Let's take ChatGPT for example. Let's give him a human body, okay, a robot body, okay, and then you give it the ability to loop. Mm-hmm. So basically, its own output, it can take it back in,
right? And
it can reinfer and remember its own outputs. That is already metacognition. But is it conscious? That's still a different thing. Right, but even though it has agency, it can act and do what it wants.
But I'm sorry, you also said that, like, for instance, that consciousness doesn't necessarily come from the all of our parts together, right?
Yeah. So it's all assumption. Right?
Exactly.
It's reasonable assumption. I think it's Occam's razor.
So
right.
So then, how is it so hard to assume that something else that is in silico is conscious as well?
So it has to do with Occam's razor. It has to do with what I like to. I've never heard anyone refer to it like this, but I like to refer to it as the natural belief, right? In the sense of like X follows from Y, which follows from Z, right? I need to have, like, if I start from base principles, I need to arrive at a spot eventually that creates consciousness, that I would conclude that there is a conscious thing here. And I don't think that if you start from base principles and create ChatGPT, that you would ever assume that ChatGPT is conscious. It's simply an extremely good algorithm.
But also at the same time, I feel
to humans though.
Like so then
I don't think that's true.
So then. Do you need to think that something is conscious in order to feel empathy for it?
Yes, I do.
Well, so you think crickets have consciousness?
And I don't have I mean, that might be a controversial take, but I think that my level of
so you just go murdering crickets and that's okay. If we were to just wipe out all the crickets in the world, that'd be okay.
Here's what I would say. I want to respond to that one specific thing. I have a Bayesian model for it. Right?
Okay.
Like, I think my level, like the degree to which a moral act against a creature is wrong, I think is proportional to my level of confidence that that thing has consciousness. Right, and so I think killing 1 trillion crickets is a little wrong because I have a little. I think there's an inkling of a chance that they're conscious.
We can't even say that we have consciousness. So how can we say?
I can in fact say that because I am conscious and you're analogous to me.
Well, but again, every brain works differently, right? So some people are. So have you heard of aphantasia? I talked to you about this before.
Okay, yeah.
Aphantasia,
where you can't rotate an apple in your head?
Yeah, you cannot have an image in your head, right? Yeah. So what say you that a person does not have qualia but functions in the normal way?
Because their brain looks like mine and it operates like mine.
But they could be a philosophical zombie where they have no qualia.
Right.
So when you stab them, but like they don't actually feel it. It's just a response because of the brain.
Right. And so I think that there's a.
That's the hard problem of consciousness. How do you prove that?
I can't prove that they're conscious. Yeah. I can't even prove that you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But the question becomes, because we both arrived at the conclusion that I can't prove it. The question then becomes, what is the reasonable belief? Right. It became of belief. Right. So it's more probabilistic now.
So then where does your belief break down then? So like for instance, a paraplegic. Right. Is a paraplegic conscious if they don't have any legs or?
Of course. Again, it has nothing to do with the rest of the body outside of the brain. It has a little bit to do with the brain, but it also has to do with the software the brain is running.
Okay. Right? So let's say somebody's connected to what is the Neuralink, right? Because their brain doesn't function as well. They need a chip to be able to sort of have some functionality, right? So then what? Like,
you got a ship of Theseus problem. What you start replacing brain parts? At what point do you lose consciousness?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that problem. I think that honestly, based on what we know,
where does your belief break down? Is what I'm asking.
My belief is that consciousness is not a switch. It's not 1 or 0.
I think it's a spectrum.
Yeah, I think it's a spectrum. I think something can be more conscious or less conscious, and I think that also, brain parts are not equal to each other. I think that if you lose the function of your occipital lobe, I don't think you lose any consciousness. But I think if you lose a portion of your prefrontal cortex, you may lose some.
Or your hippocampus, or
whatever. Yeah. Some other function, like part of the brain that actually powers your subjective experience.
So you think the brain is more like a firmware where the code and the hardware matters for what consciousness is.
I think that's true.
I agree to you in the sense that sentience and consciousness is on the spectrum. And have you guys heard of integrated information theory? They said that how much information integrates can help explain consciousness. I don't think so though.
How a black hole has more information than my brain does?
Integrating, as in integrating information, as in correlating information to an outcome.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So, in my opinion, I think it has something to do with efficiency. Mm-hmm. You will, if you have a entire country-sized computer and it's as smart as a human, I don't know if you can say that it's conscious relative to a computer the size of a room that is like this room, for example.
Mm-hmm. You think physical space matters?
I think
volume.
Because efficiency, because there's something to do with the algorithm, right? Mm-hmm. You can brute force your way through a conversation with a country-sized computer and make it as convincing as a Turing test. But you don't. But if you want to get it down to like the human's brain-sized machine that can do the same thing, that level of efficiency will necessitate consciousness, in my opinion. The efficiency.
So, does believing in consciousness actually, do we even need to believe in consciousness? Like, for instance, if a researcher is researching consciousness and he wants to keep his eyes open to all possibilities, would it make sense for him to have also a belief of consciousness, like the
Yes, because it's very fundamental. It's the one thing that we can know for absolutely certain. I'm more certain that I am conscious than I am that I'm not a brain in a jar sitting and being simulated the entire world, right? The one thing that you should be absolutely certain of is that you are conscious.
It goes back to René Descartes, right?
Right. I think, therefore I am.
Well, it's I'm thinking, therefore I am.
All right.
Yeah, it's a.
It was in Latin, right? So the conjugation.
Guys, I would love to talk for another hour about this, but I gotta go.
You have a meeting?
Yeah. Actually, it's 6 minutes ago.
Sorry for being late.
No. You're good. No worries. I think this would be also a fun
way to
follow-up podcast.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I'd be down to come back.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh, that would be. I think you come back, we can continue on more deeper, trippy topics.
Yeah. Well, and just maybe talk about consciousness, because I've always wanted to dive into it. I know a little bit, right, but also at the same time, like, I don't have a firm belief, right? I don't have a firm idea of really what it means, and nor do I even really feel like there can be one, honestly. I mean, it's sort of like the question of, is there a God, right? Like, we have no way of probing for it. So
depends on what you define God as, right?
Yeah, true. But anyways,
I hope I didn't ruin my audio a lot by leaning back.
No,
worries.
You're fine.
No worries. It definitely helps to have it closer up, but it's all good.
It won't be like, oh, they can't hear you anymore out of nowhere,
Yeah, no, it's good. But anyways, like I said, we always like to end the podcast with "until next time" and then a clap.
Okay,
so,
let's go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Until next time. All right.